The Aztec Mentor Program is a collaboration between Career Services and SDSU alumni that has resulted in over 8,600 matches during the past 6 years. Thank you to all of the mentors and students for being a part of AMP. We look forward to continuing our work to match students with professionals and SDSU alumni mentors. Now in its 6th year, AMP focuses on moving careers forward by providing opportunities to build professional connections to strengthen student career readiness. Employers are looking to hire college students and recent graduates who know how to communicate their talents, strengths, and drive. These students are career ready. Mastering the career readiness competencies will prepare you for a successful transition into the workplace. The 8 career readiness competencies are critical thinking and problem solving, oral and written communications, teamwork and collaboration, digital technology, leadership, professionalism and work ethic, career management, and global intercultural fluency. Tonight, join us as we learn from 4 featured SDSU alumni who will deliver 4-minute talks focused on a career readiness competency to inspire you to move your career forward. Our first speaker is Xavier Deanna, who will address digital technology. Xavier Deanna is currently the Director of Product Management in Connected Health at Tandem Diabetes Care, a medical device manufacturer developing cutting-edge technology to enhance the lives of people living with diabetes. He is also the former Interim Chief Information Officer, Head of Information Technology at Navigate Biopharma, a Novartis company, where he provided leadership in the delivery of software and information technology systems and services to the organization. Throughout his career, Xavier has been a leader in various technology developments and support specialties, regularly gravitating towards strategy and technology innovation. Xavier is a former TEDx speaker, a proud SDSU alumnus, and has completed postgraduate and executive education at other prestigious institutions, including Alliant International University, Harvard Business School, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Please welcome Xavier to the stage.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you. As the mysterious voice announced, indeed I am Xavier, and I am a proud SDSU alum. I won't tell you when I graduated, but I've been in technology for about 23 years. Maybe that gives you an idea. I've been with the AMP program for about a year as a mentor, and it's been amazing. So a few months ago, I was chatting with Diane Marin about possible topics to cover tonight, and while we agreed that, maybe talking about things like self-driving cars and smartwatches and the cloud would be kind of fun, maybe it would be best to talk about things that are a little bit more practical, things that you can take away with you as you start your careers after leaving SDSU. Now, what Diane didn't know back then is the fact that when I came to SDSU, I was not a computer science major or engineering major. Oh no, I was a very, very lost art major. Later on, changed to psychology, and ended up taking a bunch of classes in French and economics. So, side note to any of you who can relate, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and that's okay. Take a deep breath, you'll be just fine, you'll figure it out. But one of the things, how to end up in technology is one of the things I realized in my first job out of college is that no matter what I ended up doing, technology was going to be one of the major drivers of my career. And I believe that will be the case for a lot of you, if not all of you. Now, I know there's at least a couple of you who are thinking, well, I'm not in a tech-related field, right? So maybe this talk is not really as applicable to me. And anticipating that line of thought, and maybe hoping to prove my own conclusions wrong, I went out there and did a little bit of research. And so I went to the site, the San Diego State site, and I looked at the top 10 majors, the top most popular majors at SDSU last year. And I asked myself, how will technology impact these careers, right? I'm not going to go through all of these because I only have a few minutes here, but these are some of the things that I came up with. Biology, for example, you already know, is dominated by genomics, things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, in silico modeling, right? For those of you who go on to be medical practitioners, there will be precision medicine. For you business majors, 92% of today's currency in the world is digital. I'm not talking about Bitcoin here. I'm talking about anything and everything from multi-billion-dollar transactions between companies all the way down to that coffee you bought at Starbucks this morning with your phone. I'm going to skip mechanical engineering. That one's too obvious. Marketing, you've got digital advertising. Finance, you've got online trading. Criminal justice, you've got forensics. Psychology, there are tools for you too. Things that will allow you to collect, analyze, and share data at the touch of a button with people around the world. Things like virtual reality, right? To be able to help people in ways never seen before. Things like telemedicine, so you can help people remotely. Things like digital, things that will allow you to not only understand and diagnose behavior, but also predict it, right? Digital analytics. And most important, if there are any psych majors here, you have one very important job. Technology can be overwhelming. You're going to have to figure out how to use it to give therapy to the other 9 majors on this list. So I was right. Technology is here for everyone, right? What can you do, more importantly? No need to panic. Should be pretty simple. One of the things that I tell people is you just need to be nimble and ready to adopt a whole lot of new specialties, ways of working, tools, workers. Think about this. 65% of the children entering grade school today are going to have jobs that don't exist today. Think about that. And these are going to be your employees. You're going to have to figure out how to manage these little creatures. 43% of Americans today work outside of the traditional office. The office as we know today will either cease to exist or will probably become a lot less prevalent. Organizations that champion data literacy are going to succeed over those which do not. And then there's robots, right? And artificial intelligence and automation. A lot of people think they're going to take over our jobs. I think of it in a slightly different way. I think these are going to be extensions of our talents and what we do, which will allow us to do our jobs better and easier, faster. No disrespect to you computer science majors, but I don't think computers will ever be able to replace things like human relations, fear, ambition, innovation, creativity, passion. 3 things that I tell the students that I work with through the AMP program. Stay curious. Don't just use technology. Find out how it works. And don't settle for what you have today. Always be looking for new tools that you can use to do your job better and to grow. Commit to being a lifelong learner, which leads me to my second piece of advice. Read a lot. Make it a goal, and this is good for adults and students and you name it. 15 minutes a day, every day for the rest of your lives. Sounds easy, right? You probably read, those of you who are students, 6 hours a day for assignments, but trust me, once you leave school, reading 15 minutes a day is not going to be that easy, and it will take a lot of discipline. And challenge yourself and read about things that maybe you wouldn't think you're interested about, things that you're unfamiliar with. It will make you that much more intellectual. Associate yourself with people that you admire, people that you wouldn't mind being like, people that you can learn something from. And then use technology to network with them. I think that's probably about all the time that I have, and so I'll leave you with this. Technology, the way we live, the way we work, they're always going to be evolving. And so stay curious. Get excited. Believe me, if you do these things, if you become a technologist in your own specialty, it's going to be an amazing ride. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Xavier, for addressing digital technology, a crucial career competency. Our second speaker is Deanna Mackey. who will talk with us about critical thinking and problem solving. Deanna Martin Mackey is president of the Public Television Major Market Group, a consortium of the 40 largest PBS member stations in the United States. Mackey focuses her time on project and communications management on behalf of the stations and national leadership activities. Previously, Mackey worked for 25 years at KPBS San Diego, serving as the Chief Operational Officer in her final 6 years at the station. Mackey is credited with spearheading kpbs.org as a third content platform and creating KPBS's Converged Newsroom. In 2015, Mackey co-founded Public Media Women in Leadership to provide mentorship and training and address issues of gender inequality in public media. Mackey serves as a Girl Scout troop leader for 20 high school girls and spent 10 years in board governance for Girl Scouts San Diego. In 2014, Mackey was named Outstanding Alumna from SDSU's Daily Aztec newspaper. She earned her BA from SDSU with a double major in journalism and political science. Mackey lives in La Jolla and recently wed her sweetheart of 8 years, Christopher Ingalls. She is the proud mother of 3 children in 3 different life stages: 23-year-old Maddie, 18-year-old Robert, and 14-year-old Christine. There is never a dull moment. Please welcome Deanna to the stage.
Thank you very much for having me, and I want to thank the AMP for this opportunity. I also want to thank my friends and family who joined me, and Xavier, my current mentee. So today I'm going to talk to you about problem solving and critical thinking, and I'm going to do that through the lens of my career at KPBS and a time when I faced a problem and had to decide if I was going to step up and solve it. In the late 1990s, I moved into the executive ranks at KPBS. And at the time, I was the youngest person by over a decade. I was one of 2 women and the only one still having children. I'd had the first of my 3 children. And even though that was the situation I was in, I felt fairly welcome because KPBS was a place that had a lot of diversity. It had women in leadership, it had people of color in leadership. What I found out fairly quickly when I moved into the executive ranks, though, is that we were an anomaly. I started attending events and meetings and conferences on behalf of the current GM at the time, and I found not only was I the youngest by more than a decade, I was almost always the only woman, and as a Latina, always the only person of color. So it was a pretty lonely place. However, I wasn't compelled to do anything about it initially. When you move into leadership young, you're still kind of learning your place. You're figuring out how to navigate these meetings and these different events you go to, how to be heard. And the situation I was in is because I was very young and I was an only and I looked different. I had to figure out how to be heard, how to articulate myself so that I would be paid attention to and my ideas would be considered. And also in our industry, public media is unique in that it's not a network. Each station is owned privately, and we have national partners in PBS, NPR, CPB, but these sort of issues were usually handled at the national level. So as literally about 20 years passed, I kept going to these meetings, and I kept realizing that there weren't enough women in the room, and there weren't enough people of color in the room at these leadership meetings. But who was going to solve the problem? Who had the passion to take care of the problem? So what happened is eventually we reached a tipping point. And I'm sure some of you are aware of Malcolm Gladwell's book of the same name. And the tipping point in my industry was twofold. It was qualitative and quantitative. So on the qualitative side, what happened initially was about 8 years ago, the system started having a lot of different sessions, conference sessions, and inviting women to be on the panels to talk about their leadership experience. And I was often on those panels. And afterward, we would be rushed, the stage would be rushed with women saying, when's the next one? When can we get more professional development? How can we learn more? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm just a panelist. But this was happening over a course of a couple of years. On the quantitative side, about 5, 6 years ago, our industry started providing diversity data. And that data showed that of the 170 plus television stations in the country and 300 plus public radio stations, only about 25% of the leadership were women. And for people of color, the numbers were much, much less, as well as for the people who are making the decisions about content. Very few women, very few people of color. So the tipping point came, and I had a decision to make. I had a problem to solve, and I had quantitative data to help me with critical thinking. And I started thinking to myself, could I do this? Could I start an organization that would help women find their path in my industry? I started speaking to women who are leaders in our industry, in public media, and many of them loved the idea, but they didn't want to help. They felt like they needed to see what happened, or they were too busy at the time. So I recruited friends, most of them in middle management across the country. We started a committee, and in January of 2015, we founded Public Media Women in Leadership. And the purpose of the group has been threefold. First, to create mentorship opportunities for women. Second, to create a community, and a lot of our community is on Facebook, but we also do sessions and socials at conferences. And third, to create awareness. This was an issue that everybody could see and everybody talked about at the water cooler, at the bar at the conferences, behind the scenes, but they weren't talking about it publicly, that as an organization that supports the country with public service media, we weren't making sure that our executive ranks were full of the diversity of our country. One of the things I learned over time is that you have to be flexible in what your vision is. I was very focused on improving the numbers. However, what I learned, and I learned this through the data, because we did a lot of surveying, is the women wanted community. This was an industry that was more than 60 years old. They had never had a place where they could share, and they could talk to each other, and they could learn from each other. So what they wanted was a safe place to do that first before Deanna got her numbers. Here are some ways that we do that. In our Facebook group, there's a lot of community and conversation that happens. Up at the far right, we have job postings, and one of the best things about starting this organization has been that about once every 3 or 4 months, I get a call from a recruiter looking for women. So now they have a place to go, and the recruiters call me and say, who do you know who could be the head of content at this station? Who do you know who could be a general manager? So now women are being recognized and considered. In the bottom right, we talk about a situation where a station had an individual who wrote gentleman in the letter to the station. So there are women professionals that work at that station. So they share some of the experiences they're having and learn from each other from it. So back to the data part, the results count when you're problem solving and you're trying to make a difference. 4 years later, we have 2,000 members in our Facebook group, and last spring we received our first grant of $150,000, and that has allowed us to hire Veronica Varela-Reyes, who's in at our table today, who runs our program. It's also allowed us to use the platform that's actually used by SDSU as well for the mentor program to match people, and we have 100 matches as of this last December. So the takeaways about this, and I think this is really important, when you think about problem solving and critical thinking, we tend to focus on the analytical, but the truth is, you won't solve a problem unless you really care about it. So if you see a problem that you can solve, whether in your industry, in your career, in your student life, stand up and do it. You know, you don't wait, and I wish I hadn't waited 20 years. You have to be flexible because what you build they may not want initially, and using data can ensure your success. So I thank you for your time. That's how I can be reached, and this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna, for your guidance regarding critical thinking and problem solving. Our third speaker is Edgar Ramirez, who will guide our review of professionalism and work ethic. Edgar Ramirez is a manufacturing engineer at Inovio Pharmaceuticals, a company whose goal is to deliver novel DNA-based immunotherapies to combat cancer and infectious disease. Before embarking on his professional ventures, Edgar was an SDSU AMP mentee who was trying to help those in need through various research and development projects around the world. These projects included assisting the elderly population in Taiwan to combat degenerative disease, helping paraplegics regain movement right here at home, as well as enhancing the survivability of big wave surfers. After graduating, and shortly after landing his first engineering position, Edgar decided to become a mentor and support SDSU students to move their careers forward. Please welcome Edgar to the stage.
Wow, well, thank you for that really warm applause. I appreciate that. So I kind of drafted my presentation and then I didn't really like it because it seemed too corporate, to be honest. So then I thought, well, I gotta first Google what professionalism kind of is, because I don't know the textbook definition of it, I'll be honest, sorry. So then when I found out a really interesting definition, which is professionalism is skill, good judgment, and polite behavior that is expected for someone who is trained to do their job well. So then I thought, well, why expected? That word really piqued my interest here. I thought, well, what constitutes that expectation? What is, good judgment and polite behavior and a good skill set? As a professional, you probably right now, for all you mentors, you're probably answering these questions in your head because they're pretty easy. You have the experience, you have the background. But what if you're a student? When I recently graduated in 2017, I was transitioning from a student intern position into the real world. These questions were pretty tough to answer. And the honest response to that is because I think as students, either you're a student right now, or you were a student, or you will become a student, and we have any young people around here, the reality is that we have an implicit understanding what a professional is. We know what constitutes to be a professional. We know how they look like, no tattoos, clean shaved, nice haircut, well-dressed. We have an implicit understanding of how they look like. We have an implicit understanding of how to conduct. And we learn this because as students, early on, we know that for them, how do I say this without sounding too corporate, I guess, sorry. Essentially, you know the norms and conventions of what constitutes them. And that to me didn't seem natural. It seemed really boxing the creativity of what a professional is. So in my definition, I redefined what professionalism meant to me. And to me, it's to show great character. Show the greatest version of yourself in your career. And I say this because I'm seeing the room right now, and I see many different people, many different faces, probably all have different stories of how we got here at this moment in time. And that should be accentuated in professionalism. That should be accentuated for professionals. Instead of being robotic and mundane and sorry for saying this, but boring, one can be exciting and raw and genuine and intriguing. It's all good, don't worry. So for me, I wished I would have had a class that kind of taught this in school, and that wasn't really offered. So instead of observing and role modeling as a student, I had to gain my own experience, my own trial and error. So a couple of examples I'm going to throw out there. I learned about time management, and I learned about sympathizing with people, emotional intelligence, when I worked at the rehabilitation lab at school. I'm talking about people who had difficult lives. And honestly, as someone who needs to see them as a test subject, that's kind of hard to detach, and separate that. In Taiwan, I learned about speaking clearly and concisely, but most importantly is speaking with passionately. Because if you're in a conference, for example, it's pretty easy for them to realize that you're probably pretty smart because you're in a conference already. But they want to see the person behind that. They want to see the passion, the drive. Why are you talking about what you're talking right now? And just recently, last year, as a forensic engineer, I learned how to evaluate and really hone in the idea of work value and work ethic. Because for someone who is a kind of a workaholic, you kind of cinch in your ideas and your work, and you don't really appreciate how much you do until someone tells you, or until you see the whole project scope. So, that's something to think, and I'm still trying to grow into and comprehend that right now. But kind of to sink it into A&P, all these experiences that I've had, I gained myself, but I didn't know how to name them. I didn't know how to apply them and actually utilize them. And that's where my mentor came in, and she really put these things and categorized them themselves. It was really interesting to see how she helped me with interviews and resumes and how to network and how to actually approach the professional industry. And I thought I was really unprepared for that until she opened my eyes and said, you have the skills. You just need to know how to use them. And that's, I think, what's beautiful about the A&P program itself, which is all our mentors are so giving and they have so much knowledge and they want to pave the way for the next generation of professionals. That kind of inspired me to do the same. And that's why I'm up here right now. And if anything, I'll kind of end with 3 takeaways of what you should do and what to take from professional and work ethic, which is number 1, show great character. Show and use your personality to pave the way for your own career success. Because we all have different ways to approach a certain career, a certain position in a job, but we all have different stories how we got there. Number 2, always learn to communicate and be open to learning and sharing your experience with your mentors and your mentees. And the reason I say this is because you don't know how much value your actual experiences are until you communicate them. You don't know that for the way you approach a class or the way you approach an interview, that might be actually really good experience for someone else. And number 3, know that there's always room for growth and improvement. That's something I'm constantly learning right now in my new job as a manufacturing engineer, how I have all these skills I'm trying to apply them to this new situation and trying to improve on them, and then also teaching my other peers, to sometimes take a chill pill if you're a workaholic, things like that. And if anything, thank you guys for being so attentive, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Edgar, for helping us better understand the importance of professionalism and work ethic to career development. Our 4th speaker is Susan Poser. Susan is presenting on career management. Susan Poser brings more than 25 years of experience in a variety of roles from marketing, finance, operations, and program management. In her current role as Senior Director for the Office of the Chief Executive Officer at Oracle, Susan is responsible for special projects related to Oracle's sales strategy and operations. Some of the projects include Millennial Attraction and Retention, Inside Sales Maturity Assessment, and transforming the way Oracle's global solution engineering organizations work today with the goal of improving scale, consistency, and impact while increasing employee engagement. In addition, Susan is the co-lead for Oracle's Women's Leadership Initiative in San Diego, where she is responsible for developing partnerships and programs to help the Oracle women in San Diego succeed. Susan is also the national co-lead for Oracle's Professional Asian Leaders, which focuses on developing the skills to promote more Asians into leadership roles at Oracle. In her free time, Susan mentors through the Aztec Mentor Program, spends time with her son, who is pursuing an environmental geoscience degree at SDSU, and enjoys traveling and baking. Susan graduated from SDSU in 1986 with a Bachelor's of Science in both Business and Journalism, and in 1989 with an MBA in Finance. Please welcome Susan to the stage.
Hi. As the voice of God said, I'm Susan Poser, and that's what we call it at Oracle. I'm an Aztec alumni, Aztec mom, and Aztec mentor. And I'm excited today to be talking to you about career management. How many of you, when you think of career management, you think J-O-B, job? Is that what you guys think of? That's what I think of. But when I think J-O-B, I'm thinking joy, opportunity, and brand. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I know the voice of God told you about it a little bit. But I graduated from San Diego State with 2 undergraduates, one in business with an emphasis in marketing and another in journalism with an emphasis in advertising. Then I continued on and got my MBA in finance. When I was working on my MBA in finance, I had an opportunity to take an internship at Unisys in their finance and accounting department. Immediately upon graduation, they offered me a job, and I continued in finance and accounting, and that was the start of my career. So now let me go back to JOB, Joy, Opportunity, and Brand, and share with you how it helped shape my career in hopes that maybe some of this will help you as well. So first, joy. Find joy in what you do. I don't mean like, every day you have to be like, yes, I love my job, because I don't know how many of us, I'm not that crazy, but find joy in what you do. There's always something that you can find joy in, because nobody wants to work with like the negative Nancy or the negative Ned that, just grumbles around. I mean, they're just toxic, right? So find joy, whether it's that you've got flexible work hours, or that you get to work from home, or that you love the people that you work with, or you love the special projects that you're working on, right? Find the things that make you excited and bring you joy about the job that you're working on. After working in finance and accounting for 8 years, I actually no longer found joy in what I was doing. What I loved with finance and accounting, I was learning a lot of new things. And after 8 years, I was no longer learning a whole lot. While I still loved the people that I worked with, I was looking for something else. I really wanted to go to marketing. That was what my undergrad was. That's really what I wanted to do. And so I was really fortunate. While I was in finance, I had volunteered to build a data warehouse to help solve some of our inventory problems. And Unisys introduced a data warehousing product, and they were looking for marketing people that knew data warehousing. So I put together my resume. I put in, that I was building a data warehouse. I put everything I could about marketing. I had volunteered with United Way and had done some marketing with that. I worked here at Associated Students at Aztec Center here in the marketing department. I put everything I could about marketing, and I got the job, and that helped pivot my career into marketing. So when you're not finding joy anymore, then it's time to start looking for opportunities. So let's talk about opportunities. When I talk about opportunities, I'm not saying you need to go look for a new job. I'm saying look for opportunities to fill some of the gaps or the skills that you don't have that you want to put on your resume. So when I was in Unisys in finance, I wanted to still keep up my marketing skills. So I volunteered to run our United Way campaign. And that gave me a lot of opportunity to continue to build my marketing expertise. At Oracle, when I started Oracle as in a pre-sales function, and then I did marketing. And then I moved into operations, and I was no longer interacting with customers. And I wanted to still be able to interact with people outside of Oracle. And so I volunteered to run our employee resource group for Asians, as well as our local women's leadership group. And both of those have given me opportunities to partner with outside organizations and still interact with customers and prospects. So find the opportunities that are going to give you the skills to help you keep those, develop the skills that you want and the experiences that you want, even though it may not necessarily be related to your job. The opportunities are everywhere, whether it's training that you want to take, whether it's, a volunteer project. You just need to look for opportunities. They're everywhere. And leverage your mentors. I've never had like a formal mentor. What I have is what I would consider more of a personal board of advisors, people that, some of my peers, people that used to be my bosses, just different people, that I've met through different walks in life that I can kind of call on, and, they've helped me. They've reviewed my resume, they've given me feedback, they've helped me spot gaps in my resume that I might be able to, get some experiences and help me find, where I might be able to get those experiences. So leverage mentors. I mentor here at San Diego State, as well as I've got interns that I've mentored and some of my employees. So leverage your mentors to help you find those opportunities, identify where you might have gaps in your resume. Opportunities are everywhere. And then last, brand. Most people think of brands as products or companies that have brands, right? So when you think of Nordstrom, right, you think of customer service. When you think of Amazon, you think, whatever you want, when you want it, you get it the next day right at your fingertips, right? Everybody has a brand. What do you want to be known for? And if you don't create your brand, it'll be created for you. When I was at Unisys starting my career, I ran the United Way campaign, and then I also volunteered to, organize, some retirement lunches and maybe baby showers. And then all of a sudden, I became branded as the social butterfly. Every time there was people coming in from out of town, Susan, please organize a happy hour. Anytime there was a baby shower, Susan, please organize. And it was fine. I enjoyed organizing it, and that was fine. But as I've evolved in my career, I've kind of moved away from being the social butterfly. And what I found is when once you figure out what your brand is, use that when you introduce yourself. You don't say, hi, my brand is, but because that would sound a bit weird. But what I do is instead of saying, hi, my name's Susan Poser, and I'm with Strategy and Operations, because that really doesn't tell people a whole lot, I say, hi, I'm Susan Poser, and what I do is I work with diverse groups of people to solve one of our critical business problems. And right now, I'm working with our Global Solution Engineering organization to help them transform the way they work to accelerate Oracle's cloud business. So that helps them understand, so if I have a problem in terms of, getting people together to work together, she might be somebody I could call on. So that just happened last year. Larry Ellison, Oracle's founder, his chief of staff called on me because she was working on a global employee summit, and she needed help with how do we change the way our employees tell the Oracle story. And she asked me to come and help her with that special project. So come up with, figure out what the brand is that you want. And it's going to be constantly evolving as you, continue with your career. And like I said, I started out as a social butterfly, and it changed. But protect your brand, build your brand, and know what you want to be known for. So to summarize, career management, it is your job. It's nobody else's job, right? It's not your boss's job. It's not your parents' job. It's actually your job. And what I found is if I focus on the joy, the opportunity, and the brand, what brings me joy, what are the opportunities that I need to focus on, and what is the brand that I want to be known for? That's helped me shape my career. Hopefully it'll help you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, for providing direction about the need for career management. Thank you for being a part of tonight's AMP Talk and Networking event.